a show. Bringing more of the headlines and less of the mindless banter. Today we're going to take a look at space tourism. Is it the new hot ticket or just a luxury that's destined to fail? Then we'll see how drug cartels are literally downsizing their suitcases. But first, President Obama is now confronting his biggest problem with a speech on the economy. With the cards finally on the table about Afghanistan, the president has to get back on track and remind Americans that he hasn't forgotten about them. The holiday season is in full swing, and the 10% of unemployed Americans are worried about a lot more than just the Christmas presents that they won't be able to buy this year. But it looks like the president is promising much of the same things that he did when he came into office more than 10 months ago. He's still promising job growth, new incentives for small businesses, incentives for homeowners to fix up their houses with energy-saving materials. But now, he might even be using TARP money to do it. So is he really going to create more jobs, or is it all more talk? Well, here to discuss it with me, I have Peter Sepp, the Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union. Peter, thanks for joining me. So
great to be here.
Let's look at what has he done in the past 10 months to either fix or ruin the economy?
Well, most of his critics would say precious little, but a lot of
specialized. Not everybody can have a broad reach on things.
In a way. Now, this whole business with the president possibly set for future folks.
But isn't
like
it better
Obama
to bail out the American people than it is to bail out the banks possibly and the auto dealers and the big corporations? The American people are the people that need to be bailed out right now. They need jobs. They're not making it with what's going on.
Our philosophy going down the drain, the same thing's going to happen if we keep pumping more money into make-work job program momentum.
But when those things pop, who's the one that gets blamed? Isn't it the president? Isn't it often the government?
Often it's the president, for better or worse.
And so I guess that's all the time we have. Thank you. But it's interesting that now Obama, he's addressing the nation. He's trying to convince the people that he's going to create more jobs. But I wonder, too, if they'll be able to realize that they're going to have to do some compromising. Thanks. Well, one sign that the rest of the world is also giving up on the U.S. economy is the falling dollar. Everybody's already talking about finding another currency for reserve. China and Russia have done it, but now drug dealers are moving on, too. Gone are the days about worrying where to put those huge stacks of cold, hard cash. That was Jay-Z pretending to be a drug dealer, by the way. I'm not making any statements like that. But recently, on a British Airways flight that was bound for London, coming from the U.S., officials found an entire suitcase with 11 million pounds worth of money, but all in 500 euro bills. So what's America to do? Should we start printing higher denominations just to get some fans back? I mean, when even the drug dealers don't want your money anymore, I think that means you're in a pretty bad place. All right, so I know that President Obama has been trying to convince us that he really cares about the economy and that he wants to fix it on a budget. And you want to believe him. But then he lets the Pentagon get away with stuff like granting authority for up to $30 million worth of U.S. military equipment, including vehicles, generators, all to be left at every facility they have in Iraq. Now, we have 280 facilities there. That's $30 million each. Multiply them, it makes $8.4 billion of stuff that we're just going to leave or donate, as we like to say. But what about the fact that President Obama just ordered an escalation of the war in Afghanistan? That they need equipment there. And while the military in Iraq might be driving around in Yukons and Suburbans, you'll find U.S. troops in Kandahar driving around in broken down 15-year-old clunkers. So instead of saving money, it looks like we're just blatantly wasting it. Despite the fact that legally government agencies have to demonstrate that the equipment they want to donate isn't needed by other agencies. But I have another kicker for you. Now they're debuting the very controversial Osprey in Afghanistan. Here it is. This thing has the unique dual capability of both hovering like a helicopter and flying like a fixed-wing plane. I know, it sounds cool. But in reality, it's been known for being much more of a death trap than a success. It's taken 20 years and $25.7 billion to finally get one right. But while they got this one test run to go well in Afghanistan the other day, Congress members aren't being fooled. Representative Ed Towns from New York described the realities of this machine and its capabilities in a few words. He said, it has problems in hot weather. It has problems in cold weather. It has problems with sand. It has problems with high altitude. And it has restricted maneuverability. The list of what the Osprey can't do is longer than the list of what it actually can do. Yeah, not too promising, especially when cold, heat, and sand all describe Afghanistan pretty well. So what is the Pentagon thinking? Why are they dumping billions of dollars of equipment in Iraq instead of handing it over to Afghanistan, where our goal is to help build up their security forces? As if we have all the money in the world to spend. I think it's pretty outrageous. Now, this next story is one that's sparking a lot of debate. An inmate in an Ohio prison, Kenneth Byros, convicted of killing and dismembering a 22-year-old woman, might be the first person in the history of the U.S. to be put to death under a new one-drug method of lethal injection. The normal method gives you 3 drugs. One that knocks the person out, the second that paralyzes them, and the third that stops their heart. But the whole process only takes about 7 minutes. Now, this new one-drug method takes 15 and supposedly puts the inmate into a deep sleep until eventually they pass on. This is meant to be a more humane method. But then again, it's never been tried before. So it could either be taken up in other states if it's a success, or it could be a horrible fail. So this really brings up the question of whether it should be considered progress or if it falls under the umbrella of human experimentation, of cruel and unusual punishment. Another inmate in Ohio already had a botched execution last month, where they tried for 2 hours to find his veins, inserted the needles 18 times, and finally just had to give up. Can you imagine preparing yourself for death, thinking this is it for 2 hours, and then living through the whole ordeal? Definitely sounds like torture to me. But then again, these people that are on death row have been convicted for brutal crimes, for acting in a cruel and unusual manner towards other people. So, do they even deserve to be treated humanely? Maybe they're the ones to experiment on. It's a very divisive issue. So, I want to know what you guys out there think. Write me an email at feedback@thealonashow.com. But now, don't go anywhere, because after the break, we're going to ask if Barbara Walters might be lowering the bar on her standards. And then we'll see if Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke just might be putting his foot in his mouth. About to do her 10 most fascinating people of 2009 program. I mean, she herself is one of the most recognizable, one of the most famous veteran female journalists in all of America. And let's look at some of the people that she's interviewed over the years. Fidel Castro. We also have Hugo Chavez. There he is. And we don't have Vladimir Putin, but she also interviewed him. All political heavyweights that any journalist, myself included, would give anything for a chance to sit down and have a one-on-one with. But then who did she pick as 2009's most fascinating people? Well, we have Kate Gosselin, the mom from John and Kate Plus 8, Lady Gaga, quite the pop star, and South Carolina's First Lady, Jenny Sanford. Are those really the most fascinating people of the year? Since when did Kate Gosselin join the ranks of world leaders? Do you think Barbara Walters is lowering her standards, or is this just a symptom of what Americans really want these days? Well, here to discuss it with me, I have Washington, D.C. media consultant Joe Silberman. Joe, thanks for joining me. What do you think? I mean, Kate Gosselin, is she really more fascinating than, let's say, President Obama?
Certainly not, but we have to. America is celebrity today, not necessarily a newsmaker.
That is what's news, but it's odd because Barbara Walters, like I said, she started off, I mean, she did a lot of hard-hitting news. She's done some of these huge interviews. You would think that at this point in her career, she would be at the top, at the peak, that she would still only be interviewing the highest level of officials. And so do we look at this as some kind of a decline, or is it really not her fault?
I don't think it's their fault at all. I think it's the fault of news in general. When news...
But is entertainment now what the public wants? Maybe that's what they think public service is now.
Well, like anything else, how do news departments or any network decide what the public wants?
But so you don't think there's any room for alternative media? Because I think people are getting fed up with this. I think people have had enough of the celebrity, and they're just not getting what they really want from the major networks, from their big news channels, even the cable news channels. I think people want something else, which is why they're drifting over to the internet, because that's where they want to get the real information. It's just not being offered to them.
Well, obviously, I'd like to see my friend Laura Flanders on Grit TV, and I'd like to see something else. I download all of those, and I watch them on the train on my way into work on my iPod.
Get them all at your fingertips.
That's
Thank you.
right.
Well, it definitely is an interesting symptom of American culture now, how people like Kate Gosselin seem to be more fascinating than the people that are leading and ruling the world. All right, speaking of what Americans want, a new Rasmussen poll has just shown that the Tea Party would fare better than the Republican Party in an election. Apparently, 23% of Americans would vote for a Tea Party candidate over only 18% that would vote for a Republican candidate right now. Now, Democrats are still leading the way with about 36%. But let's look at this seriously. Up until recently, the Tea Party was just considered a movement, a fringe part of the Republican Party that was trying to take out their frustrations in a vocal, maybe sometimes even rowdy or violent way. Take a look at this video.
But if we do not repent, will we not be judged? Have we already not been warned? 9/11 was our warning. Repent! Turn back to God!
It's right. That's right.
35%.
But then again, if this so-called movement is moving up the political ranks so quickly, maybe this is exactly what Americans want. Maybe these big rallies are a force to be reckoned with, because they represent the true sentiments of the American people. A population that's fed up with the option of only two parties, which most of the time feel more like the exact same party, just with different names. So might this be the time for third parties to rise? What do you guys think? Write me an email at feedback@thealonashow.com. All right, one thing that's definitely about to rise is the very flamboyant British entrepreneur Richard Branson's brand new commercial spaceship. Spaceship 2, as the 20-meter-long craft is called, is meant to open a new era in space tourism. It's equipped with 8 seats, and for $200,000, passengers can fly 50,000 feet into the air. Then it fires its own rocket, then it climbs a total of 110 kilometers above the Earth. And once you're up there, you experience 6 minutes of weightlessness. Even though the first flight won't happen until 2011, Branson's already collected $42 million from people that want to be on the list. But I don't know, 6 minutes of weightlessness sounds just like foreplay compared to the week that people like the owner of Cirque du Soleil get to spend in space when they fork up more than $20 million and train with Russian astronauts. So what do you think? Is this really the beginning of a new era in space tourism? Or is this a venture that maybe is destined to disappoint or even fail? Well, here to discuss it with me, I have Jeffrey Manber, the pioneer of space tourism. Jeffrey, thank you for joining me. So, I mean, are you going to take a trip on Spaceship 2? Are you already on the list?
No. Well, first let me say that 6 minutes is a lot better than one airplane ride and make it exciting, fascinating, and it's cool. It's a real nice moment.
But you don't think that it's kind of a tease? Space tourism, yeah, it's interesting. 6 minutes of weightlessness,
It's
right?
not government. It's a first step. It's not the...
A fascinating time when now flying into space is, becoming something that you can just pay for and do if you please. So, this last story that I have for you, the little financial face-off stretching across the pond. U.S. Federal Reserve Chief Ben Bernanke has been under a lot of fire from the U.S. Congress lately, as he has been undergoing the hearings to get reappointed. So his lawmakers have been pounding and questioning him, wondering whether the Fed should be subject to more oversight and regulations. They've been using Gordon Brown's recent triumph over the Bank of England as an example. I mean, Brown had been trying for years to clip the wings of the Bank of England. Finally, he's been able to rein in on their independence in these times of financial crisis. But Bernanke, who's usually pretty reserved, has decided not to take this as a lesson from Congress when they compare him to Gordon Brown. Quite the opposite. He's actually just bad-mouthing this guy. He's saying that Brown's decision turned out to be, quote, a destructive run and a major problem for the British economy. Ouch. Is Bernanke really in the position to speak? I'm not sure pointing fingers at a time when you're trying to prove that you're qualified for your job while the country is in a huge economic crisis is the best idea. But I guess printing money into thin air isn't either. Well, that's it for the Alyona Show, you guys. But join us next time, where we're going to discuss General Stanley McChrystal's much-talked-about trip to the Hill. We want to know who he's going to talk to and what he's going to ask. In the meantime, keep writing in to feedback@thealonashow.com. Become a fan of The Alyona Show on Facebook. And don't forget to follow my Twitter feed. See you next time.